good morning or good afternoon, depending where you're based. My name is Claudia and I'm with the Marcus Evans Group. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar on Clinical Trial Information Systems, CTIS. Ready or not, here it comes. Brought to you in partnership with SanaClis. Before I begin, I would like to cover through a few housekeeping items. As you can see, in the bottom of your screen, there are multiple application widgets you can use. All the widgets are resizable and movable, so feel free to move them around to get the most out of your desktop space. If you have any questions during today's webinar, go ahead, submit it. We're going to take questions right at the end of the webinar. And if any question gets unanswered due to the lack of time of today, don't worry at all. Someone from the SanaClis team will get in touch with you after today's webinar. With that said, I do not want to delay more this panel because we have a great speaker lineup. So I'm going to ask, please, Francis, can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Thank you very much, Claudia. I'm Francis Corley. I'm based in Leuven in Belgium. I'm with the Good Clinical Practice Alliance Europe and the Strategic Initiative for Developing Capacity and Ethical Review. I'm also a European Open Science Cloud Futures and Research Data Alliance Ambassador for Ethics and Law. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Michael?
Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Zörer. I'm head of clinical operations at VarmX, a small Dutch biotech. I'll represent the opinion and thoughts and position of all, probably representing also other colleagues, especially those people not in major pharma companies, but working in smaller pharma or biotech on how to handle and how to deal with the CTIS system. Looking forward for the discussion.
Thank you so much. And then from SanaClis, we have Suzanne.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Claudia. Well, my name is Zuzana Baťová. I am a pharmacist by education and training. And in SanaClis, I am responsible for regulatory affairs and submissions of clinical trials to regulatory authorities and ethics committees. And as of the end of January this year, the use of the clinical trial information system portal is mandatory for all initial submissions. So from January, I am working in the portal on daily basis. Before joining SanaClis, I have worked for several years in regulatory authority and had the chance to see the development and discussion about clinical trial regulation and CTIS from the other side. And I understand and share the philosophy behind this, what is to harmonize the system in EU further and simplify the system and to do approval faster. So it's a really pleasure for me to be here today, and I am looking forward for our discussion.
Thank you so much, Susanna. And then last one, but not least, Laura.
Hello, everyone. My name is Laura Bogoeva. I'm heading the communications team here at SanaClis. My role today would be to make sure that we have a fruitful discussion. We have a great team of panelists on board. We will try to get through as many questions as possible. And really looking forward to having an enjoyable 40 minutes, an hour, whatever we do. But very much looking forward to a very fruitful discussion. Feel free to ask us anything.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Well, with that, I hand it back to you, Laura, and I'll catch up right then. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Claudia. So as my colleague Susanna just mentioned, as of the 31st of January this year, the use of CTIS is mandatory for all initial submissions. With just 2 months after the implementation, the question, however, still lies in, are we truly ready? And are we really prepared? So I'm going to start with the million-dollar question today for the panel. What are the biggest challenges from your professional perspective? And this is a question to all. Susanna, perhaps we can start with you.
Oh, thank you, Laura. Well, I see first challenge come from clinical trial regulation as such, and the second from the CTIS portal perspective. When I can elaborate a little bit more about the clinical trial regulation, the challenge is that there is increased transparency, and it's crucial to realize that clinical trial regulation makes all data and documents in the portal publicly available with a few exceptions. So this is quite a new situation for all of us, and there are some tools how to deal and how to manage with this increased transparency and how to find the balance. The second challenge is really very strict timelines because we have only 12 days to respond queries. And the third is to choose the best or the right submission strategy. And from the CTIS portal, I would say that I have completed all available training for free and some also paid, but some of the things I think are important have not been brought to my attention anywhere. For example, registration of unauthorized product and substance outside the CTIS. And this is my first experience that I got stuck in the system because I don't have this registration. So many steps need to be done outside the portal.
Sounds like you have a lot going on already, and it has only been 2 months, but they say that it gets easier with time. Michael, if I can hand it over to you very quickly, can you tell me a little bit from your professional perspective? Because not every company has a dedicated regulatory department. Not every company can afford to spend all the time and energy on CTIS submission. So from a small biotech perspective, can you tell me what are your biggest headaches and challenges?
Yes.
Just tell us a little bit more from your perspective, please.
Absolutely. So to be honest and frank, I think a majority, not just me, but I think a majority of colleagues have avoided the CTIS system till January this year to the last moment. I've seen that a lot of submissions have still been done under the old system, which is more the trials regulation system. Why is that the case? Because we just don't have the time and the resources, and also there is no studies that we could use as test balloons, very much likely causing some delays or at least prolonged timelines till successful approval of a trial, and probably also no understanding from management that you would want to use trials just as test balloon to get used to the system. That was the situation as of last year, but this is gone now. So the challenge now is that for any next study will be, of course, forced to use the system, and the big challenge is really how to handle that, the practical aspects of that, and avoid that to have unnecessary delays, or really see the timeline from a finalized protocol to the study approval being prolonged more than necessary. Already anticipating that there will be some prolongation, but to really make sure that we handle that as good as possible. Definitely need to have the help of strong and knowledgeable partners who have been fully trained and went through those submissions before.
And Francis, I wanted to ask you a question about the ethics committees, because I know that you have a vast experience. So could you tell me, from your perspective, how has CTIS transformed, or what changes has it brought among the ethics committee in Europe?
Thank you, Laura. What I wanted to say here was the challenges of the CTIS system is not really so much the system itself. It's not the portals, it's not the data. That's not it. That's not why it took from 2014 until just this month, last month, in order to get this thing operational and working. So I really sympathize with our colleagues here from pharma who are having to upload data into a system that's not been fully tried and tested and proven and coming into difficulties. But that's not where the real problem is. The real challenge for this was creating a system within Europe, and that's what this portal, the CTI system, was intended to do. Go back to the 2001 directive on GCP. We go back through this whole thing of registering clinical trials. The whole thing then with the ethics committees also, getting the ethics committees, frankly, to behave themselves and to work inside of a system. And now with the CTIS system, it's not so much the data or the system itself, but it's getting the regulatory agencies, the industry, the academics, as well as, and the ethics committees, all to work together in a European system rather than simply national systems or local university ethics committees that we had before. So this is what I would say, this is the challenge that the CTIS system has addressed as part of a whole long history here in Europe of trying to make the pharmaceutical industry or the pharmaceutical research enterprise attractive for people to do the work here in Europe. Those are my thoughts.
And Francis, if I can just ask you another question in terms of the impact on digitalization.
I think it's tremendous. I think it's more than we know, because behind this, clinical trials are only one part, but a very important part, because actually it's one of the places in society where people actually understand digitalization, or they understand how to work with data. Everybody who works in clinical trials works with data, and they work for data. So everybody knows what a trial master file is, and they know what they're going for when they're doing it. But the clinical trials themselves are one part of creating a digitalized healthcare system or creating the European health data space. So I think it's a very important accomplishment here. And I'm just have a lot of sympathy for our colleagues who have to do these trial runs now and make it work.
Indeed. Well, just going back to the technicalities, Susanna, you've mentioned that for the last 2 months, you are working in the system pretty much on a daily basis. So could you tell us a little bit more about that? And in particular, if you could give us insights on working with the EMA help desk, how has that been for you, and any tips you could offer?
Yeah, thank you, Laura. Well, I have to say that our good news is that the EMA support desk always responded to me very quickly in several hours. And at the end, they managed everything. What I discovered during these 2 months is that there are 2 different support desks in EMA, and it's good to know which one to contact. The CTIS itself interacts with different existing databases and systems managed by the EMA and retrieves the data from them. And at the beginning, for example, I need to register the sponsor and EU legal representative in so-called Organizational Management System, or SPOR. And this is another database outside the CTIS. And another system that interacts with the CTIS is Vigilance. And in particular, it's a component Vigilance Medicinal Product Dictionary, which provides the CTIS the information with the information about the IMP used in the trial, unauthorized or authorized. And as I mentioned at the beginning, for example, for the submission or for the filling the information, I need to register the product and the substance in another system. And at the beginning, I was confused which EMA support desk to contact, because the one support desk is only dedicated to CTIS, and the other one for the rest of the systems. And this was somewhere between, because I need to work in another system, but the information I need to CTIS. So I had several open tickets in both EMA support desks. And it was challenging, I think, also for them. But at the end, we managed it. And now I am happy because I have my numbers for product and for the substance. And I can, at the end, I was able to move on and with the application and continue with my work. So to summarize, it's good to know that there are two different support desks, one for only for CTIS and the other one for other system. And for those that will be working in the system, it's good to know that before starting to work in CTIS, some activities and some works need to be done in the other systems.
So what I'm hearing is that there's a whole lot of time that needs to be dedicated, or at least at the very beginning. So going back to Michael's point, actually, Michael, if you can tell me what is probably for a typical biotech operations lead looking to tackle new challenges. And here you might consider the internal capabilities which you may not have versus looking for strategic expertise on the outside. So simply put, when you're looking at a partner to support, what are you looking for?
Yes, I think we're looking for, excuse me, we're looking for both. I mean, first, of course, as I just heard, all these technical flaws and the technical stuff, that's something definitely to be looked at in your CRO partner. And I think it just makes sense as they will have more frequent submissions, and we'll start soon to accumulate that sort of expertise on how to get access, how to blind data, which data to upload, data form, and any technical, all the technicalities. I would really look for a strong CRO partner to help with that, as they will be better educated on how technical stuff really works. Apart from that, we touched a bit on the let's say strategic things. Also here, looking for expertise and experience on how is that called? It's not like reference member state, but the concerned country that you may pick in the submission to choose, or for example, also on if you should wait. I think I've heard that from colleagues that you may wait for all the countries until you have, let's say, you have 10 European countries until all the country packages are ready, and then you just get it all in one, versus a strategy where you start with a few countries, get the protocol and the study approved, and then add the other countries where probably the country documents may take longer. Kind of also kind of really advising and providing expertise and insights. That's something I would look for a CRO partner. So it's to summarize, it's not just the technicalities, but also kind of on strategies on how to work with the system and how to get that best done.
Well, Susanna, if you can maybe comment from your perspective as a CRO who has been supporting for the last 2 months and will do so beyond. Can you comment a little bit on that, please?
Yes, I definitely understand all what was said in this. Michael, you make two categories, and it's very nice to distinguish between these technicalities and submission strategy. For example, yes, it's good to have the discussion with the sponsor before we start to work in CTIS. Sure that some things can be changed during the submission or during the filling the portal, but this is very important to have the discussion about the strategy. One strategy could be, as you mentioned, that a whole application part 1 and part 2 to all selected member states can be submitted. The second strategy could be that only to some member states concerned at the same time we can submit the application that is limited to part 1. This is such a mixed application, and we can wait for the conclusion on part 1. And then we can submit the other member states that we would like to have involved in the study. And the first strategy is that if the sponsor decides to extend the application to other member states, this can be done only after the decision of all member states concerned is issued. So this is, we need to think about the timelines and strategy and number of sites and number of member states. We need to take all this together and think what is the best approach for the sponsor to have, for example, many member states and many sites at the beginning, or to have less member states and less sites and to get the first approval. It depends what is the priority of the sponsor.
Actually, Frances, I see you nodding your head there when we spoke about the different member states. Anything you want to add to that?
Well, I think it's a deliberate strategy in Brussels. I can't say if it's the Commission, the Parliament, or the Council, or all three together. I would guess it's all three, but really to create competition between member states for clinical trials. Because I think that's one way to create excellence, and that was another way to create efficiency. And what they've done with the CTIS system, or the implementation of the CTIS system, is to, in a certain sense, make the sponsors the customers. And the customers are going to go to the place that serves them best. Now, it had a downside too, because it gives the customer or the industry or the sponsors a little bit less freedom in how they can start or initiate trials or go to one country or another country for their approvals. But I think the overall strategy, and we can debate it, seems to have been a strategy to try to really strengthen clinical trials in Europe, make Europe as a whole more competitive for clinical trials. And in order to do that, they had to create competition between the member states. And in fact, if I was to keep going, that's also what they did with the ethics committees as well. In order to improve the ethics committees, they created competition.
This was actually going to be my next question when you spoke about the competition, and then I wanted to see about the competitiveness in the future. So you've actually already answered that question, but any of the panelists want to feel free to agree or disagree with that statement? Feel free to jump in.
I would think I would agree. At least what I'm really looking forward to is to see kind of the benefits after kind of going through this initial struggle with the technicalities, but we know there is more behind that. I think as you'll get big benefit is, of course, you'll get one European opinion on the protocol, and it will be approved, and you don't get, like in the past, I was working for ClinOps for many years. Sometimes you got like this not discrepant kind of comments to your protocol, and you were just wondering how to best execute it. If one country is commenting on the many blood draws and the others are saying you should add more antibody blood draws, then probably and that's real life. You end up being with local protocols, etc., which is certainly not helpful for the research, and it's just cumbersome. So that's going to be a big benefit. I think also regarding the ethics committees. I would also expect that they will hopefully in the future all the ethics committees will be working professionally according to more common standards and not use too much of let's say their local flavor and habits. I'm looking forward also to see that you always get guaranteed timelines. As far as I understood, the system is just moving on if no opinion is received by a particular member state or ethics committee within the given timeline. I think that that is certainly a helpful factor. I'm mentioning as to make it not just very generic for people who have worked in clinical trials, mentioning, for example, Romania with significant delays in many cases seen for approvals of especially of amendments, but also, for example, ethics committees in Italy kind of still using their own opinion, not in line with the clinical trials regulation, and are, as for a small pharma client, no way to go to Den Haag and sue them somewhere here. So sometimes even needed to drop sites or the whole country just because they were insisting on something was not according to the to the directive. I hope with the regulations, this kind of misbehavior will be completely abolished. You have some certainty how to run trials in Europe. I think I'm looking forward to that benefit.
Susanna, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I realized again when I was listening to Francis and also Michael that regarding this competition, it's maybe good to emphasize that there are two parts. Part one that is regards mostly scientific documents, and part two that will be assessed by ethic committees per each member state. And when we talk about the part one, this will be assessed only by one member state. But when we talk about the decision about part two, these documents and this decision need to be still made by each member state concerned. And this is what I understood was Francis talking about, that there will be the competition between the ethic committees in each member state, because they need to deal and they need to look inside each trial, each document regarding the clinical trial that will be conducted on their territory. But for the regulatory authorities, this will be a little bit easier because they will use the expertise from other member states. I hope that I am understandable, but from regulatory authorities, it will be a little bit easier because only one member state will assess the part one. But when we talk about the part two, still each member state need to be involved.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. But let me ask you this then. You touched upon it a little bit, but what are the expected benefits that you see now that you've been working on it constantly versus the expected benefits that is going to be bringing in the future. In the future, looking at an ideal world where everybody is a lot more familiar, they have the hang of it, things are just going into place. So what do you think would be the biggest benefits now versus 1 or 2 years from now, or 3? Susanna.
Yeah, definitely. It was mentioned by colleagues that for the core scientific documents, we will have only one version in place. So for big clinical trials where, for example, 10 or 12 member states will be involved, the good thing is that only one document will be the final, and only one protocol, one IMPD, one IB. So this is definitely very good thing. Also the timelines, because the timelines are coming from clinical trial regulation, and regulatory authorities and ethics committees need to stick to this timeline. So there is no unpredictability regarding timelines, or when will the ethics committee from state AB or XYZ will be issued. So we have some certainty in the system for this. I think it will simplify the procedure in the Europe.
Yeah, it sounds positive enough, so that's always good. Francis, you mentioned that you had a question regarding the impact on data. Would you like to discuss?
Yeah, if I could, Laura, I want to come back to what Susanna just said too.
Sure.
Timelines mean SOP. That's what timelines mean. Because that's what they did in 2001 with the directive, and that's what they're doing now. They're forcing, in particular, not only, but in particular, the ethics committees to get their house together, because the only way to consistently meet a timeline is to have standard operating procedures. And you just can't do it willy-nilly the way you want to. Something else just to keep in mind too here, Europe is a strange kind of structure sometimes, and it's not always clear what's what, but Europe is a treaty organization, so it's based on a treaty. Health has a very weak place in the treaty, although it's been strengthened. But ethics is not in the treaty. And every time you go to Brussels, people always say, ethics is a member state thing. We can't do ethics here. It has to be at a member state. Now, that'll inevitably change, but that's why these ethics committees still keep their prerogative in each member state, and why you have to submit there in all these member states. One other thing I was thinking of, I'm sorry to speak too much, but think of the GDPR in this context of this CTIS, and think of the AI Act, the Artificial Intelligence Act, that doesn't even exist yet. Europe is extremely proud of the fact that people around the world, countries around the world, put together laws that reflected the GDPR, that sometimes even copied the GDPR. For example, the Philippines even copied a draft of the GDPR and put it into its law probably before it was ready to go into law. So, and Europe is very proud of the fact that they created this law. Now, they're doing the same thing with the AI Act, and they're very proud of it. I mean, there's actually now a very high-level group, I forget what it's called, between Europe and the US and other countries, and I attended one of these meetings, and I mean, of course, the US in a certain sense is leading it or wants to lead it, but Europe, the people in the Commission, you heard it a number of times saying, well, we have this AI Act, nobody else has it, although it doesn't exist yet. and other people won't. Well, it's the same thing with the CTIS system. It's not being advertised that way. It's not being spoken of that way, but that's where it's going to go. And this system is not going to stay the way it is. This system is going to expand very quickly into the whole field of the European health data space. So I think the future is going to be even more interesting. Sorry to talk too much.
No, not at all. Well, actually, speaking of the future, we have a question. In the last year of the 3-year transition period, do the sponsors need to transition all clinical trials that are still active at the time of the end of the transition period? Susanna, perhaps you could answer that?
Yes. Well, from 31st January 2025, this is the cutoff. Any trials approved under the clinical trial directive that continue running will need to comply with clinical trial regulation. So there will be the need to transfer this trial to the new system and to upload and record information about this trial directly in the CTIS portal. So the cutoff is January 2025. So if the trial ends before this date, we are all safe. So the studies can. If the study ends before this date, it's okay to go under the clinical trial directive. But if the trial will run after January 2025, these need to be transferred.
Okay. Well, I have sorry, Francis. Go ahead.
If I could.
Of course.
And this is going to be a big problem.
Why?
For especially academic trials, I believe. Because if you get some of these like cancer trials with these protocols where they have a lot of trouble recruiting people, and it takes a long time for them to recruit people, these protocols stay open for a long time. And if they have to now transition from protocols that were done in the old system and put them into the new system, it's going to be, and I think for industry too, we'll see it, but I think mostly in academia, it will be very expensive, and we will see these trials stop. In some cases, that will be a good thing, and in other cases, that will be a less than good thing, I believe.
Well,
absolutely true, Francis.
Sorry.
I think you're absolutely right. We already see now that, I mean, I'm not working on academic trials, but if you were more academic, I would feel for them. I think this is sort of that's what the systems are just not capable of doing. Like for let's say they're not made for amateurs or for people with a very low budget. Already now, if you look at UDRA-CT or probably that handy webpage like trialstracker.com, and you look at the published data, which is already now in force according to the regulation. If you look at most of the pharma companies, you see like close to 100% compliance. If you look at many large academic sites and many large hospitals, you see compliance rates of anything between 0 and 50% only, which is definitely out of compliance and not according to the regulations. But if you tried ever to fill in your study data yourself according to how UDRA-CT would want to have those data, you notice that you need to do at least a master in statistics to work on those data. So it's definitely you're absolutely right. It's not supporting, let's say, academic research here. So there is some more professionalism absolutely needed. They won't be able to cope with those systems.
And if I could, sorry, Laura, but this is a great thing. This is great. Yeah. We have to get rid of this difference between academic trials and industry trials. It never made sense. you can't, it's not acceptable that you plead the poor boy on the block and say, I can't afford to do it, so I'm going to get all these exceptions. That's not acceptable. It's not good science, it's not good ethics. So this is a good thing. The academics should do the clinical trials as well as the industry does them, I think.
I see. Sorry, Laura.
I was going to say, what are your thoughts on this comment? Because I saw you excited about the topic.
Yeah, I see this more positive. I really hope that this will be not such a challenge for academic trials, because they are already approved. And what I saw is that most of the new studies during this 1 year transition period were from academia. And I think that this is not intention to cut the academic trial and non-commercial trials in Europe. I think the philosophy is other, to support them. And I think that there is a big support from EMA and other organizations that are in Europe. And I know that there are certainly organizations dealing only with non-commercial clinical trials that will support the academia and hospitals and all this network with the transition. So I would like to be more positive.
It's good to have that positivism for sure. Well, in the interest of time, we tried to get through as many questions as possible, but I have one final question for the panel today. And the question is, do you think that it will get easier with time? Because we heard about the headaches, we heard about all the challenges, the timelines. Obviously, there is the handbooks and the trainings and whatnot. But with time, everybody's trying to stay optimistic, say that once 1 year has passed, when we have done it, once we have the necessary experience, it will get better. So what are your predictions on CTIS in the near future? Will it be easier, or are we going to have this webinar 12 months later saying the same thing? Michael, why don't we start with you?
Happy to do it. I would definitely hope that that now, as everybody is now forced to use the system, so let's say everybody will have some exposure to the system, the login, the submission procedures, see how things go. I would definitely expect that by end of the year, the amount of knowledge in pharma and CROs has vastly increased. So and probably also some initial technical flaws have been solved, and there is better guidance, and everybody understands the technicalities of the system better. I would definitely hope that future discussions, I'm sure there will be more panels in the upcoming years, etc. But I would definitely hope that they will deal less with technical shortcomings and troubles, but more with real experiences with things around harmonization, probably submission strategies, etc. But yes, definitely, I think that these first experiences will be the most let's say dangerous for the timing to make sure we avoid pitfalls, and the most cumbersome ones definitely for myself, I expect that the second or third submission will be smoother than the first one.
Definitely. Susanna.
Yeah, I think it will be easier for all involved countries, all involved parties, sponsor, CRO, regulatory authorities, ethic committees. I really believe that it will be easier, it will be more harmonized and within agreed timelines. And the environment will be, or already now is more predictable regarding the process. And I appreciate this predictability.
That's good to hear. Francis, what are your final thoughts?
Well, I have some very good news. My thoughts are very good. My thoughts are extremely optimistic. That is, Laura, Susanna, Michael, we are going to continue to talk just the way we are today. Now, is it going to get easier? No. It's going to get much, much more complicated. Wow. Are we going to talk about the things we're talking about today? No. A lot of these issues we have with this system the way it is now, that'll go. But this system is going to get big. This system is going to get complicated. This system is going to make us very happy people, and we're going to be able to talk to one another for a long time. And I think that's great.
So very different opinions here, but perhaps we should all have a continuation webinar very soon and see who was right and to what extent. So with that, I want to hand it over to Claudia. Thank you so much for everyone that submitted questions. And whatever we didn't manage to cover today, we would get back to you as soon as possible and continue the conversation offline.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Francis, Susanna, and Michael. I think the audience is walking away with great insights. And as Francis said, let's continue talking about it, because that is the main thing. We need to talk about things that will make a difference in our daily days, work task, or even personal life. So with that said, on behalf of Marcus Evans Group and as well our very long-standing partner, SanaClis, I would like to thank you all for attending today's webinar, and we'll be catching up very soon. Thank you and have a great morning. Bye.
Bye, thank you.
Goodbye.